Fellas, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over the love child of a Slovakian engineer and a Glock mag hoarder. I mean the cool Eastern European cousin to the MP5. I mean the Grand Power Stribog SP9A3G, imported by Global Ordnance. They'll be relevant in a few minutes. While you digest that bowl of alphabet soup that was the firearm's official name, I'll explain what all that stands for. Grand Power is the Slovakian manufacturer, Stribog being the model name and possibly inspired by the Slavic god Stribog, god of winds, air, and storms. The SP stands for Stribog pistol, indicating its classification as a pistol. The number following SP stands for the caliber the firearm is chambered in. Using context clues, I'm sure you can figure out what this one shoots. The A3 refers to the third generation model with upgrades like the roller delayed operating system, and the G stands for Glock mag compatibility, because who needs proprietary mags when Glock and Scorpion mags exist? Springfield, we're looking at you. Now that that's out of the way, let me give you a couple of disclosures. The first disclosure being is that there are no major sponsors of this channel, so all of my opinions are my own and there's no monetary incentive for me to shill for any sort of company. The next disclosure being is that this gun was not paid for by me. It's on Len from a good friend, so a big thank you to them for letting me borrow this firearm for a couple of months to make this review. With the disclosures disclosed, let's dive into the gun. Starting off with the barrel itself is 8 inches and it is also cold hammer forged, which is preferred according to the industry leading influencers. It has a 1/2x28 thread pitch, which will easily accommodate your favorite suppressor. One thing to note is when you purchase the gun, you'll notice you only get a thread protector. This one's obviously been removed and it's been replaced with a tri-lug to host a suppressor, which I thought was interesting and set me up to make another joke. But before I did that, I decided to try to figure out why. I have 2 theories and you let me know which one you think is more probable in the comments. Theory 1, Grand Power didn't waste the time developing or sourcing muzzle devices because they figured you'd probably end up changing it anyway, which helps keeps the price down. Or Theory 2, it's due to import laws, specifically 18 US Code 922 Section R, referring to the limit of foreign-made parts from a very specific list, like barrels, receivers, triggers, etc., with muzzle attachments being on that list, which refers to flash hiders, suppressors, muzzle brakes, and compensators. To avoid being classed as a prohibited non-importable firearm, importers like Global Ordnance outfit the firearm with as many US-made parts as possible to not exceed the 10 foreign part limit. By not including the muzzle device, it reduces the count of imported parts, allowing easier compliance with 922R. So, to make a long story short, Uncle Sam has a 10-part limit on foreign goodies. Why waste one on something you're probably going to end up replacing anyway? Before we lock back into the video, isn't it crazy that we somehow exist here and all of your life choices have led you to watch my video? Just something to think about. Let's get back to it. Whenever it comes to the overall accuracy I've experienced with the Grand Stribog, it is more than acceptable in my personal opinion. Anything within 100 yards is absolutely no problem to be hit. Overall, like I said, the 8-inch cold hammer forged barrel is more than acceptable whenever it comes to accuracy at this given price point. Overall, good job, Grand Power. Moving on to the handguard. The handguard itself is a block-shaped piece of aluminum that gives you about 5.5 inches of usable space. That being 2 slots of M-LOK at the 3 and 9 o'clock position with a piece of pick rail at the 6 o'clock position. In most modern firearms, pick rail at the 6 o'clock position isn't a traditional design, but it is a welcome design to the gun in my opinion, giving me a nice textured surface to grab when my hands are all sweaty. If you compare the Stribog's handguard to one of its direct competitors, the Kuna, you can see the Stribog's handguard is slightly longer. That little difference is very noticeable whenever it comes to how comfortable it is in your hand. When shooting the Kuna, I tend to have my hand more towards the front of the magwell versus being able to get a nice C-clamp on the Stribog. I understand that we are talking very minimal differences, but it is still something to note. While we're here, we can talk about the charging handle. It is non-reciprocating, which is ideal. I ran mine on the left side of the gun, 1 for convenience, and 2 because it acts as a natural point of contact on the gun, giving me an effortlessly repeatable grip on the gun even after moving and running. One more thing to note is if you do use the charging handle to lock the bolt back and it stays in the rearward position like that, whenever you go to send the bolt home like that, it's going to send that thing screaming home and it will pinch you, so just be aware of that. Overall, in my opinion, I am a fan of the handguard that comes with the Grand Power Stribog. Like I said, if I could change one thing, it would be about a 1/2 inch longer and move those M-LOK slots up about another 1/2 inch. That would probably also accommodate a sling. That's one thing I hate about this firearm is that there is no natural point to mount a sling on here anywhere. You have to add all of your own attachments to be able to do so. Other than that, no other complaints. Overall, in my opinion, good job, Grand Power. I probably won't find a better time than now to address it, but with the gun, you do get included backup sights integrated into the rail. I would usually ignore these, but they're so useless I couldn't. They do fold. When folded down, you get something very similar to pistol iron sights, so essentially backup iron sights, but I couldn't see them being used in any realistic scenario. The only one I can conjure up in my head is if you didn't run a brace or a stock on it and just used a single point sling, but even then, it still would be suboptimal. When flipped up, they aren't tall enough to co-witness with pretty much anything, so that sucks. sucks. They are made of polymer, so I couldn't imagine they'd be super durable. If this was my gun, I for sure would have done a drop test, but it's not, like I said, so they live to see another day. To me, they are the iron sight equivalent of a participation trophy. Overall, they're just not very good, but luckily we live in a world with plenty of affordable and reliable red dots, so they're pretty much irrelevant. Let your inner consumer consume. Moving back to the lower, like its other European cousins like the Scorpion, CZ Bren 2, and the Kuna, the lower on the Stribog is polymer. The lower itself is completely ambi, so manipulating the safety, bolt catch and release, and the mag release on either side of the gun is possible, which sounds cool until you try to use the bolt catch and release. It's like a stiff pair of frozen jeans, and it's harder to find than ammo in 2020. When trying to use it for reloads, you could probably practice enough to become proficient with it. When I used it for stationary reloads and hit it perfectly, I could get some pretty quick ones. But if you're going to be reloading on the move, I would recommend just using the charging handle. Trying to hit this while running would be suboptimal. I think a very useful upgrade for this would be the HPI Industries extended bolt stop. For the price of the gun, I think spending the $40 to $50 is for sure worth it. Regardless of how horrible this bolt catch and bolt release is, I will give Grand Power a pass because they did take the time to try to give us a decent trigger. We're looking at you, Daniel Defense. For the most part, Grand Power succeeded, giving us a flat face trigger with a solid, consistent break at around 4.5 to 5 pounds with a solid reset. Let's take a look at it. It is just a single stage trigger with no take up. I would say probably like a 4.5 pound break, and then a solid short reset. And then again, no take up, no wall. It's just a single stage trigger with a nice crisp break, and then solid short reset. Whenever it comes to the magwell itself, I will say it's not overwhelming or underwhelming. It's flared enough to where if you were to say miss a little bit, it's going to guide you in perfectly like that. So reloads have been easy. It took a little bit of getting used to, but once I got it down, I can get some pretty quick and lightning fast reloads with this thing. Overall, again, a nice addition to the firearm. Moving on to the pistol grip, like I said, this lower is one piece of polymer, so there is no option to switch the pistol grip if you desire to do so. I don't hate the pistol grip it comes with, but I also don't love it. But overall, it's not the end of the world to me. I didn't really notice it while training. And then the safety is ambi, so on either side of the gun, you're able to actuate the gun on and off safe. Big fan of that as well. I will say the safety is far superior than something like the Daniel Defense PCC's factory safety they give you. That is just a complete atrocity. This one is actually really pleasant in my personal opinion. So redeveloping the bolt catch and bolt release is a good idea, and then maybe integrating the ability to be able to switch out pistol grips for your preferred one would be a good idea in the future. But overall, no real beef with the lower on the Stribog. Good job, Grand Power. Moving on to the whole selling point of the firearm, which is the operating system. Like I mentioned earlier, the A3 stands for the operating system, which is roller delayed, unlike the A1's direct blowback. The recoil impulse is soft, but if you're expecting MP5 smooth, you will be disappointed. I will say it does shoot a little softer than the Kuna and a lot softer than the Daniel Defense's PCC direct blowback system. But with the softer recoil impulse, there is a trade-off, or as an economist would say, opportunity cost. The roller delayed operating system runs so dirty, it's not even funny. This was my first high-ish round count on a roller delayed gun at around 1,700 rounds, unsuppressed by the way, and this thing was so dirty, it was a bit ridiculous. It took me like 45 minutes to get this thing like 80% clean. This gun was shot 100% unsuppressed for this video, only because I don't have a pistol caliber suppressor, but I couldn't even imagine how much dirtier it would have been if it was shot suppressed. It would have been interesting to see if shooting it suppressed would have caused any sort of malfunctions within the 1,700 rounds I put on the gun. Speaking of malfunctions, ironically, the only malfunctions I had were one of the biggest selling points of this firearm, the compatibility with Glock mags. I experienced failures to feed strictly due to magazine issues. One was a 15 round Glock mag with a black follower in it. Malfunction, see what it was? It wasn't a light primer strike, so it must have been a magazine problem, huh? It is well used, and the other magazine that gave me issues was the 33 round Glock mag you see in a lot of the footage you're watching. That has a messed up spring and follower. I did have another malfunction, which was a failure to feed. So all of the malfunctions were 100% magazine related, nothing to do with the firearm at all. I have very little experience with the factory Stribog mags the gun comes with. The owner of the firearm said the first two mags he has would just randomly eject rounds when shaken too hard, and the one he gave me decided to detonate itself inside of my range bag, so I just replaced it with Glock mags and moved on. Overall, for averaging a $1,000 roller delayed firearm, I'm extremely satisfied. And one last thing before the final verdict, the gun comes with a SP tactical brace, which I think pairs nicely with the Stribog. No complaints besides that there is nowhere to mount a sling to it. But other than that, not a bad choice. So after all of this information, what is my final verdict on the Grand Power Stribog? I think the price point of the firearm is competitive in its market, I don't think it's practical for any duty use scenario, but for a range toy or if you want to dive in the roller delay world without breaking the bank, it's a good option. The gun itself is accurate and reliable enough. I couldn't ask for much more, but just know you're going to have to use some elbow grease pretty often to keep this thing clean. I hated the bolt catch and release, and I think it needs upgraded from the factory, but Grand Power makes up for it with a pretty decent trigger. The backup iron sights are pretty much useless, and I felt like they're included just to be included, essentially a participation trophy for just being there. Over the course of the 1,700 rounds I put through the gun, I had no malfunctions that were firearm related, only magazine related, which is acceptable. The compatibility of Glock mags is a great choice because everyone always has some Glock mags lying around. Proprietary mags in 2025 is just stupid and a money grab in my personal opinion. Again, we're looking at you, Springfield. Like I said, if you expect this thing to shoot like an MP5, you'll be disappointed, but between this and its direct competitor, the Kuna, I'd rather have the Stribog, or at least during the filming of this video. On the list of all the PCCs I have experience with, the MP5 still reigns king supreme, and rightfully so. The DD PCC as my number 2. The Grand Stribog is like number 4 or 5 on my list, but in its price range of the roller delayed PCCs, it's number 1, which counts for something. Overall, the impressions of the Grand Power Stribog are very positive. I might actually end up buying one myself just because I enjoyed shooting it so much. But other than that, there's not much more to say besides thank you all for sticking around until the end. I know that time is very limited, but thank you for spending it with me. If you agree or disagree with anything I said, let me know why in the comments. If there's any other specific firearms you want to see me talk about, let me know what they are in the comments. But until then, I'll be back with more videos.